Okay, well, I think we're going to get started now. We'll probably have a few more folks wander in, but thank you. I hope you guys have really enjoyed this morning's sessions. I know it's been fast and furious, and hopefully everybody will, once we finish this, it'll be lunch, so please bear with us. We'll be about 45 minutes today to do a panel discussion. So this breakout session is called Making Your Business Fly. And there we go. So the purpose of this breakout is, there's a lot of people, start up their business and get going. The purpose of this conversation is to say, okay, once you've actually got your business going, what's the next step, and what are the things that you need to start building within your company, whether it be culture or your operating model. So there's a lot of different things that organizations need to go through. So what I'd like to do today is we're going to do two really short lightning talks by Hollie Choi, and Hollie is with Fox Productions, and then Sean Jazayeri of Current Technology. And then we'll move into a lightning panel. So the theme is really about creating a strong culture and making sure that you have developed a strong culture within your organization. How do you leverage partnerships to build your brand? And then really have the panelists talk about their personal experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly. But what I'd like to do first is I'd like to have each of you just quickly say what your name is, what company you're with, and maybe just a short summary of that company. Sure. So I'll start with you, Hollie.
I'm Hollie Choi. I'm with 20th Century Fox. I've been with 20th Century Fox for about 13 years now, and in that time I've sort of spanned really the entire business. So I know the studio kind of inside and out, down to the guys lighting the stages, all the way over to what I'm doing now, which is intellectual property management and the metadata that goes along with that.
Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie McLean. I'm the Chief Growth Officer of a legal technology company called Athenian. Oh, I should add that I'm a co-founder, too. Forgot that. And I'm really excited to be here and to talk to you about sort of all the cool things we've been trying to do in disrupting the legal world, I guess.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Richman. I am co-founder and co-CEO of a software company here in Seattle called Skykick. We were founded about 7 years ago. And what we do is we move data to the cloud, we do protection and security in the cloud, and then we help manage applications in the cloud. But we're all focused on IT service providers. And our mission as a company is to help partners and IT service providers grow and be successful with the cloud.
My name is Ambika Singh, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Armoire. And Armoire is your closet in the cloud. So we took your closet and we manage it for you. So it's a rental clothing service. We recommend things to you, and you pick what you want, wear it as long as you want, and when you're done with it, you send it back to us, and we send you new things.
Good afternoon. I'm Sean Jazayeri. I'm one of the two token men on the panel that Carrie put on here just to...
We thank you. We thank you, Sean. And Evan.
Thanks. I work for Current Technology. We are a software company specializing in cloud migration and cloud SaaSification.
Okay, great. Okay, that's the wrong one. So what we're going to do now is I've asked Hollie to spend about 5 to 10 minutes and just spend a little bit of time talking about her journey at Fox Productions. I'm really excited mostly to hear about all of the stars, all the actors. Give us the dirt.
I don't know if I'm allowed.
Okay, well.
I spend more time on the less sexy side of the studio. So right now I'm working on the intellectual property master for Fox. This is the cornerstone application of the entire company. So about 2 years ago, I was approached to come in and take over and manage it. And I thought, this sounds like really a good thing for my career. It's very visible. It touches everything in the studio. I have 78 direct downstream dependencies and about 22 source systems that are all feeding in and out. And so this sounded like a really great plan. And so I got in and we started talking about how we were going to globalize this system. And everything went sideways at that point, right? Because then I started to realize it was a mountain of tech debt. This thing had been around for 7 years, and it was really fast and furious. They were trying to just, kind of throwing down gravel as they went, thinking they were going to pave it over later. And so I was faced with really anything you can think of. The infrastructure needed something. There were software problems with the packages. It had 5 UIs. It was, it was steady, but it was pretty brittle. So that was really scary. And then on top of it, I was working with a skeleton team because I had really only about 3 people on my team at that point. So on top of that, they said, let's make sure that every Fox company is all working from the same sheet of music. And then about a year into that, we discovered we're about to be purchased by Disney. So it got really crazy really quickly. So some of the things that we took away from that as a team, because I did build a team really quickly. Some of the really most important things when you're facing something that's really kind of that crushing. There were days where I would say that whether or not I was having a good day was measured by how many times I ended up in tears as I was walking to my car to leave, right? So it was pretty traumatic for everybody. But I think probably the things that are most important to keep in mind when you're doing things like that is, first, you want to make sure that you really embody the idea of fail fast. And this was something that I didn't really even understand when I started this, but it really is how I prioritize everything. And for anybody who isn't really embodying that yet, basically what you do is you look at everything and you go, what is the scariest, most detrimental thing that could possibly happen? And that's where we go first. And if you have 2 of those, you try maybe not to do them at the same time. So, because that can be really scary as well. The next thing that I would say I took away is when you need something, I'd spent 13 years at the studio, so I have a lot of connections. I know everybody. And so it was easy for me to go around and look at my network to try and find who could help me with these crazy infrastructure problems and the security issues, and you name it, we had it. So I got really comfortable with the phrase, I need your help. And if you start a conversation like that in any context, most often the person is going to want to help you, because we just as human beings like to help each other. And if somebody says to you, I need your help, you immediately go, great, okay, how can I help? So I use that phrase all the time, still. And then the other thing was that I wanted to make sure that I took care of my team, because they were working really, really hard, and they were under the same kind of crushing pressure that I was under. And I wanted to give them attention, but at the same time give them autonomy. And so there's a balance that you have to strike with that, because they think of stuff that I would never come up with that solution, and some of the stuff they come up with is just brilliant, and there's a reason they're all there. So I like to give them autonomy, but at the same time I don't want them feeling disconnected and not, that their careers aren't getting any attention. So I also give them that attention, that there is a payoff at the end of this. We are still working on your career, and even if you're not thinking about it right now, I am. So keeping them engaged like that, I think, has made all the difference, because they're all still there, and nobody seems like they're going to pass out or anything. So, but in the end, it's been about 2 years now. The team is agile, which they weren't when we started. The system is solid, and it works really well, which is great, because with everything at the company sort of keying off of this one system, you want it to be as healthy as possible. I wouldn't say it's perfect. It still has some things that we want to do to it. But overall, it's been an uphill battle, and I feel like we're in a good place now, and so hopefully we continue to keep the tech debt to a minimum. So.
Well, great. Thank you. Thank you, Hollie. I'm going to pass it over to Sean now. So Sean Jazayeri from Corin Technology. I've had the privilege of working with Sean and Faisy from Corin for quite some time now, and they've got a very interesting offer that they'll probably talk a little bit about today for all you entrepreneurs in the audience.
Thanks, Carrie. The theme is all about speed, and to me, speed comes with removing obstacles and speed bumps. And there's a lot of ways you can do that, through process innovation, through outsourcing to channel and alliances, or technology. Given my background, of course, I'm going to focus on technology. Every once in a while, a technology comes out that can completely change things. And I think we're at the verge of one of those, and I'm going to tell you about that technology. If you use an application to serve your client, whether it's your own application or open source, the next natural step is to SaaS enable it. So you don't have to provision a new client every time. You don't have to have multiple instances for clients. You don't have to meter it. You don't have to bill every single one individually. Usually, SaaSification is a 3, 4, 5-year project. And usually, it takes more effort to SaaS enable a product than to actually develop a product. We have a product that actually can SaaS enable apps in, if not in days, in weeks. And we've helped our partners achieve that. And as Carrie said, we're going to offer that. I think the details will come out a little bit later. But as part of the acceleration offer, we're going to offer that to up to 5 companies at no cost. If you have a product, if you have an application that you use, come to us and we'll SaaS enable it for you.
Great, thanks, Sean. Okay, so what I'd love to do now is just, oh, there's your slides. Sorry about that.
Well, let me just say that those are examples of open source apps that we've already SaaSified. So if you pick one of those, it's already done. You can have it. If you have something else, we'll SaaSify it for you.
Great, well, thank you. All right, well, let's jump into the panel itself. What we wanted to do is just start with a few questions and just to get it started, but please talk amongst yourselves. And if there are questions out in the audience, please do put your hand up and let us know. So the first question is, it's really about building culture. And now that you actually have sizable organizations, there's probably a very strong culture that you need to build within your organization. So what are the top 2 things that you've done to build an inclusive culture within your organization? And I'll start with you, Katie.
Hold on, I have to turn this on.
I can start with that.
I got it.
Oh, you got it? Okay, great.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a part of a company called Athenian, as I mentioned. We're only 10 employees right now. And so we have the opportunity to be quite mindful about building our culture. I've always worked in large companies like Oracle and Google, whose culture evolved to what it is today. And I have some opinions on how we could do better, for women especially. So to be mindful of our culture, what we've done is focused hard on purpose and values and bringing our people together around those common ideas, whether they're men or women. We still only have 20% women in our company, but we do want to change it, and our thought is around making it a great place for everyone to be. So I went into this company thinking, let's build the culture, and people will come and want to work with us. And so that's what we focused on.
And have you got your first customer yet?
We do. Our first customer, we won through that exact idea of purpose, and it was PwC, which is a wonderful first customer to have. They have great credibility to sort of add to our tech startup scrappiness, and they've co-developed the product with us as well. And the way we did that, I guess the story around that is, I learned when I was at Google kind of what I call a culture sale. And you look for the people that are like you, who believe what you believe, and you hang out with them. They have to be a person who has some pull that can get something done. But I put out who we were into PwC. I happen to know them really well. And then someone came back, I believe that, and his name is Jean-Philippe Couture. And he looks like the brother of our CEO. And they get together and they're like, oh, we're going to change the world in legal, la, la, la. And they love each other, and they co-develop this product, really. So if you think about it that way and you start seeing that kind of pattern, you'll start to be really successful, I think. And we did that with customer number 2, which is one of the largest law firms in Canada, known to be the most innovative. And they went, oh, I believe that too. And then we're all like this community now. So it's an interesting journey.
That's a great story. What about you, Evan?
So I think there's several things. As Katie was saying, I think we've been very mindful about our culture from the beginning. We're about 200 people at this point. One thing that's a bit different about us is that we have a co-CEO structure. And one of the things that having co-CEOs is, and we actually run the company together quite closely and do most things together. And with that, it stems from a very strong belief that collaboration and inclusion is the best way to run and build a company. And from that, we've noticed it's kind of set the tone for being open around and sharing around multiple perspectives to solve business problems, and diverse set of skill sets, and encouraging different leadership styles, all in the name of trying to drive business growth and performance, and creating a culture that's very productive and even more importantly, I guess, even very healthy. And so I think that's one aspect that's been helpful for us. But I think after that, and from day one, when we started our company, we actually defined our core traits, what we wanted to be as a company. And they sound kind of typical, I guess, at the very high level of passion and leadership and team and smart and being outstanding. But underneath each one, we wrote individual traits that we thought were really important and values for us. And two of them in particular, I think, are related to inclusion and collaboration. And one of them specifically says we believe that collaboration drives better results as a business. And another one around leadership is being confident, that we are confident yet humble. And one of the things that I've noticed within our company is we do attract a great deal of people that really fit those values. And when you see that then in play, it shows up in inclusion. So humbleness, in order to be humble, it's very open. And fundamentally, you're going to be more open to new ideas and more open to new perspectives. And that's one area, if you were to be at our company, you'd see it's very collaborative. And I think that aspect has been something that we've nurtured and continues to be part of the DNA as we hire people. And then we went one step further to try to even operationalize kind of how we collaborate. And we have a set of operating principles around collaboration. And we have something we actually call 50-80-90. And within 50-80-90, the idea is that that feedback is good, and you're trying to drive to efficiency and the best outcome possible. And so you create anything you can as a quick draft to get to 50%, but the idea then is to get feedback from others to then rev it quickly and go from there, but to foster collaboration to get to the best result. And that's one area that we've tried to continue to expand upon.
So I think it's interesting, especially in startup land, people talk about culture all the time. And for us, we're coming up against giant competitors, as most startups do. And I sincerely believe that our culture is a strategic advantage for us. And so I focus on it in that way. But I think if you don't necessarily believe that, sort of is like a box that you're checking. And maybe there are companies where it doesn't need to be. But for us, because we are trying to be better, faster, more agile, smarter than really big organizations, I know that we have to be able to hire and retain the best. And the best people only hang out in fun places. So you've got to create that kind of culture, and I focus on it in that way. Specifically, I think an interesting opportunity that we have that we've turned into an advantage is that we're 30 people, 27 are women, And that mix looks incredibly different. So because we're a fashion company and we do all of our own operations, about half of our employees are stylists and warehouse folks who work in our company. And our engineering and marketing team came from, I was a grad student at MIT, so we have PhDs and tenured professors, and everyone sits together in the office, and it's an incredible advantage on both of those sides. I think the tech team, if they were here, would talk about how interesting it is and how rewarding it is to really understand their customers, who in a lot of cases are the operations people or the stylists. They're friends with them, so they understand their pain points. They want to build for them. It's not this like, oh, this random, person down the street who I don't really know. Why am I building these features? Because we have developed something where there's deep mutual respect for how we're building this thing and how we serve the customer. I think it really is incredibly rewarding. And so Friday is demo day, and so the when we bring out the new features, it's literally like almost like when you would debut something when the kids come home on Friday afternoon after school, like the tech team's out there being like, guys, I shipped this, and the stylists are like, woo! And it's a really sort of rewarding experience, I think, for everyone. And we look forward to Monday, and the people who they've built for feel like their week's going to be better. Tech team's out there being like, yeah, we did this thing. And so that kind of deep mutual respect around what we're building and why we're building it, I think really helps us to use that as an advantage.
Thanks. We are a fairly small company, and we don't have a whole lot of gender diversity yet, unfortunately, but we do have a lot of international diversity. When you get on conference calls, you hear every accent in the world. And one of the things I've made sure I'm aware of is cultural tendencies. I've noticed some cultures are less likely to confront, and some cultures are less likely to say no. And most importantly, some cultures hate to deliver bad news. Now, to me, I've always want to hear bad news first, because that's what I want to focus on to fix it. So one of the things I go out of my way to do is, with people from those cultures, I make sure I'm very direct with them to ask questions, encourage them to confront me, to say no. I personally love to say no all the time. It's not an issue with me. But with some of them, you actually have to ask the same question multiple times and in different ways to get them to tell you what they think is impolite or unpleasant.
I'm gonna move to the next question, if that's okay. And Katie talked a little bit about this earlier, but partnerships, and so did you, Sean. One of the things that I think is really important that you all shared with us is that building strong partnerships makes a significant difference. So can you share with us about how and what types of organizations you've targeted to build those relationships to really accelerate your business? I'll start with you, Hollie.
Sure. So we have really because it's a big company, there's a lot of opportunity to make these really interesting partnerships. So we're a really matrixed organization, so it's a huge kind of company to navigate, and we work with everybody we have vendors, we have internal folks, we have consultants, so you can really kind of partner up with anybody on a lot of things. And I think I mentioned earlier about asking for help, and that has been one of the ways that I know I've been able to establish some of those really close partnerships with other groups, is that when I work with somebody from the infrastructure team, for example, it becomes a tight-knit thing, because we are sort of doing each other favors, is sort of how I look at it, right? So they'll call me, I need your help. I'll call them, I need your help. I think one of the things that as a woman I've faced is there's sort of this idea that I don't understand the technology, which is always really hilarious. So one of those is I will confront, actually nicely, I confront people when they sort of imply that I don't know stuff. So But it's new for me, right? Because for years we sort of always just went along with, just ignore it. It's not that big a deal. But I think we've all started to realize that didn't work, right? So now I'll give an example. I told one of my guys the other day. I said, tell the developer that he needs to switch that to a blob field. And the guy on my team is a librarian by trade, so he didn't really understand. He thought I was making a joke, and I was sending him on a fool's errand, and he was going to get really embarrassed. And so I explained to him what it is, and the developer comes in later in the day. He's like, well, Hollie, what you need is a blob field. And I know that you probably aren't familiar with that. And I'm like, let me just explain to you where you got that information, right? So I think as he starts to see me differently, though, he does sort of laugh at himself, and he's like, wow, you're right, that was really silly of me. So I think even just having those moments where you sort of bring it to their attention that maybe you're doing something that you don't recognize is creating in another situation, it could have created a divide between us. It becomes sort of a shared joke now so.
Evan, I know that as part of your company, you work a lot with, I think, Microsoft and AWS. When you started out, how did you build that enterprise credibility with them, and how did you get them to get engaged and partner with you?
Yeah, so our company really is working very, very tightly with Microsoft. And what we do is really accelerate partners' ability to move their customers to Office 365 and to the cloud. And so when we founded the company, we really focused in very, very closely on what the problem was and what the challenge was, and really the value proposition to the IT service provider, which was really making it much easier and much more efficient and reduce the risk of moving data to the cloud. And before we went and started the partnership, and I think we would share this with anyone as you get started, is we didn't go to Microsoft right away. The first step wasn't to establish the partnership. The first was establish making sure that your product was a really good product market fit, and then on top of that, that the product itself was ready to go. And so we started with, of course, an MVP and a minimum viable product, and then we spent basically about 1.5 years working directly with customers and iterating on the platform for quite some time to make sure that we were at a place, because once you go into partnerships, reputation is really important, especially if you're dealing with, it could be a fairly small community and they can share with each other, and so you really want to have a chance to be successful. Now, that being said, of course, you can pick some very, very friendly partners and know that they're beta partners as you're starting with them and be in a safe environment. But our approach was that we were building our platform in an MVP way, iterating very, very quickly. We got a few partners and worked with them quickly again, kept iterating. And then when we went to Microsoft in a much bigger way, we were ready to go at scale, because when you're dealing with a company like Microsoft, it's global. They've got hundreds of thousands of partners, and so to be successful with that, you've got to be prepared to kind of go at their pace and go from there.
Okay, thank you. And Katie, you work with one of the, I guess, oldest and probably most conservative businesses out there, the legal industry. So how have you, how's your organization helped build enterprise credibility?
Well, really, it's all been just a stepping stone. So winning that first, I call marquee customer in PwC, gave us the credibility that we needed to move to the next few. And it's been really, really important to our success. But it's also very difficult to work with a company like PwC, as awesome as they are. They move at a different pace than a startup. And so we had to look for our friends within the big organization that would help us navigate the differences. And we did find that. So in their procurement process, we were given a lot of support by other parts of the company to make sure that they could buy our application. Yeah.
Okay. Did anybody else have anything to add to that question?
Just one quick point. With larger companies like Microsoft, when it comes to alliances, you have to deal with them like a large country. They have multiple points, and it's not good enough just to be connected with the alliance people or the sales people. You want to make sure you have contacts with a commercial team, with the engineering team, with the field team, and so on. And sometimes I end up introducing them to each other to make sure that we have success together.
on your slide, you had the point about how is it different with women. So I used to work here, and then I worked at a bunch of different tech companies. So this is my first foray into sort of like the women's world. And it's amazing building partnerships in a women's world because it's completely different. There's a lot of asking for help. There's a lot of belief that things will come back around. I mean, I just look out, I recognize there's so many faces in this audience of people who are my partners. It's totally different than it was at Microsoft, where it would take us 6 months to sort of like get all the I's and dot all the T's. Certainly scale is part of it, we're small, but women do partner in a completely different way. And I would say for the women who are starting businesses, you have to switch your mindset and realize that there is a different currency, and it's a better currency because it's one of, we believe that if we help each other, these boats are gonna rise, and this is our moment. So I would say just go for it because these women will be all around you.
That's great, thank you. So let's have a little fun now. So why don't, I'd love each of you, just in one sentence or two, just talk about some of the best of times and the worst of times that you've had in terms of taking your business to the next level. You can start anywhere.
I can start with the worst of times. This is a very startup story. So we do a combination of digital marketing, as you can imagine, but we also do these event-based marketing experiences. And so about a year ago, we were doing this roadshow in New York. And keep in mind that I built this company because I'm not a fashion person. I thought there's got to be a way for me to look like the people I want to look like, so I guess I'll build an algorithm and it will teach me how to do that. So that's what it does, so it's great. So I'm not from this world. So I'm carrying around all these clothes. I don't have a lot of confidence about the fact that I know how to put this stuff together, so now I'm without my computer and I'm pretending to be the fashionista and the algorithm's not with me, so I'm already terrified. And it's raining in New York, and we're carrying just loads of clothes, and we end up at this event space that we've rented, and literally flash summer storm. We set everything up. We're hair drying the clothes because they ended up being wet by the time we get there. Managed to get it all put up, and no one comes. Literally nobody comes. Not like one person, not two, nobody comes. And at the end of the night, it's like me and the team, we're sitting on the floor, and it's like, it was one of those moments, but the silver lining was the website. We looked, but I mean, I wasn't tracking, and miraculously, we'd had an okay day digitally. And it was just like one of those things where you realize, like, man, we are in this trench. We are in deep. But somehow, we're going to be able to see some silver lining. But it was quite the wet moments, the hair dryers. I definitely thought about, like, oh, man, I should stick with my computer. That's where I'm safe.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll share one on for both, I guess, the best and worst. But the best is probably an extension from the Microsoft partnership. And I think in any startup, you've got incredible, exciting, good milestones. First customer, first check in the bank from an investor, and many other first employees as you're growing. They're all incredible milestones. But when we, actually first started down this road on the partnership side with Microsoft, we had to prove ourselves. And when we went in, I remember they offered, they did these tours around the country where they would go to each city and do a cloud day. And they'd have maybe 4, 5, 6 hours where they'd work with these partners and put them in a room. And we went to Phoenix, Arizona, and it was basically a test to see if the Microsoft partners actually would like what we had to say. And so they gave us 45 minutes. And we went in, we did our thing, and we thought, oh yeah, that was really good. And right afterwards, the partner account manager, who I think was a bit more on the skeptical side, asked everyone in the room, and said, okay, so you guys heard from Skykick. Who would buy it? And it was our moment, and it was 100 people in the room, and 100 hands went up.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And that was our first moment of like, all right, we do have this, you know what I mean? And this was going to be really good. And I think it went from that point to, it kind of was a story that went through Microsoft, and all of a sudden we got invited to go to every event that they had, and 4 years later we had 20,000 partners.
Wow, that's fantastic. Great story.
That's amazing.
So worst of times, so that was good. On the worst is you know, and the caveat I think on the worst of times is kind of the end of how you were telling your story, which is the worst of times oftentimes end up being the moment that your teams bond and come together because you get through it. We're a live service. You know, we do migrations. You go to the cloud. Migrations are incredibly complex, 10 to the 23rd of permutation of things that can go wrong. But miraculously, something always would go wrong on a holiday. You know, you work, Thanksgiving, work, Christmas, and something would go. And this year, or several years ago, we're like, all right, we're good. We're heading into Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. Nothing's happened. I got family packed in the car. We're going over Stevens Pass. My phone starts blowing up and going through code red. One of our developers hit the wrong button, database deleted, and everything that was going on Christmas Eve. And everyone was just in this panic. But the best of that story is the teamwork that came together, you know what I mean, and working through that. And all I can say is to the group is, as you have low points, it is a very bonding experience, and it actually creates the strength of the company and the power to believe, and could actually become some of the real DNA and as part of your company.
That's great. Katie, what about yourself?
Oh, there's so many. We went to our first big trade show, a legal trade show in Orlando, the CEO and I, and we realized that our booth wasn't anywhere near as nice as anybody else's, and we had absolutely no swag. And we were just excited that we actually could afford to go and pay for the cost of being there. And so we were like, oh, what are we going to do? And so we went to Staples and we put together, we got a Polaroid camera for $50, and we got a big Bristol board thing and some yellow stickies and some licorice. And we set up our booth with that next to the fanciest booth around. And we said, okay, we asked one of the people to help us come up with a question we could ask people who came to our booth. And then we would put their answer on a sticky on the board and take their photo and give it to them. And they kind of liked it. And so the question was something like, if you were going to have your son or daughter go into the legal industry, what advice would you give them? And it just so happened that that conference was filled with women, and they were mostly paralegals having worked their entire careers sort of under a lawyer, taking guidance from them, and not a lot of their own thinking. And so some of them were just so in awe that we would even ask their opinion on that. And so our booth was the most crowdest, can I say that? Booth around. And from that, the guys that had the really nice booths spent time with us, learned our application, and they've become our partners. Wow. So it's kind of culture, who we are is to ask questions. Attraction, be a little quirky, that's one of our values, leads to growth. And so the guys that are now our partners turn out to be key to the U.S. legal business, more than any other person we could have approached, and it was kind of by accident. We just put out who we were, and they came to us. So
that's great. Awesome. Anybody else?
I'll say the best of times for us is probably some of the magazine coverage that we're getting lately, being included in top 8 migration companies, with the others being Microsoft, AWS, and Google. And for a tiny company to be included in that list was pretty good. I'm not going to tell you about the worst times because I'll probably use bad language, and I don't want to do that.
All right, well, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to attend the panel. The panelists will be available for questions after the session if you'd like to chat with them. But thank you again, and we're gonna actually have lunch next. So lunch is out in the corridors. It's in 2 corridors. This one along here, and then one closer to the main breakout area. Also, please do know that we do have executive roundtable lunches. So if there's any lunches if there are any sessions you'd like to go to over lunch, take a look at your program guide and just join that table. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you to the panelists.